face, Dave Hallberg.
Thank you very much, Reed, and thank all of you for coming and the folks out there that are listening on live stream. I'm looking for Senator Sombke and Senator Sire, please, to join me on the panel. Without further ado. I might also say while we're waiting, wherever you want to sit, Jim, for them to get collected, that the bios and photos and all the presentations will be available on the what website is it, Barrett? EESI, which reminds me, by the way, that I have two big thanks and shout-outs here. One is to Senator Worth and Reed for this incredible venue at the UN Foundation, and in particular, Charlotte and her team have been just incredible. And the second is to EESI, Dan and Carol and Amory. You guys have been really, really great, and this live stream is helpful, and we're going to continue to work with you on that in the future. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read through the bios of these incredibly Renaissance gentlemen to my left, but I'll start with Doug Sombke. They're both South Dakotans, which I'm very proud of since I was a South Dakota farm boy myself. Doug farms. He has a very large farming operation with 3 sons, but for the relevance of today's event, he's the president of South Dakota Farmers Union, as well as the president of South Dakota Farmers Enterprises. How he finds the time to do all of these things, I don't know, but he's truly an ever-ready bunny. You will hear today him talk about America's farms protecting America's cities. He recently was published in the Des Moines Register in a guest essay that laid out a clear blueprint as to how we think we can move this industry to protect America's cities from E10 to E30. He'll talk about that today. To my immediate left is Jim Sire. He's the CEO of Glacial Lakes Energy, which is a approximately 400 million gallon enterprise of 3 separate facilities. They're extremely efficient, very productive, profitable even in today's environment. And he and his team brought those plants back from the verge of bankruptcy about 10 years ago, where Jim, in my mind, has earned his claim to fame, and I'll never forget watching how he and his people did it, was what we call the Watertown E30 Challenge. A couple of years ago, they mobilized the resources, hired the technical expertise required, and convinced the people of their town to get behind the use of E30 in standard vehicles, what some people call legacy vehicles. It was an enormous success. They mobilized the car dealers, the police, just about everybody, including the girls and boys clubs. And all the data that came out, as he will explain, had proven that the use of E30 in standard cars is magical and very effective. From there, I'll go with you, Doug.
Well, thanks, Dave. You know, every time I get up in front of people, you want to give me that clicker? The first thing I want to point out is, whoops, must not be on this piece. All right, there's no picture for it, but it's my grandkids. You got to make this personal. You really do. I mean, there's one reason that the ethanol business is as successful as it is, because I think people like Jim and people like Ori Swayze and some of the other pioneers like David have made it personal. And for me, it's about my grandkids, because the last thing I want them to do is to say, down the road, when things are way worse than they are today, Grandpa, what did you do? That's not going to happen, not under my watch. And as president of South Dakota Farmers Union, I relayed that message not only to our state board, but to our members in National Farmers Union as well. And Right now, we've got Ann Steckel, who's on board with us. Glad to have her representing Farmers Union and the E30 and E30 Challenge, with Jim and his board have taken on. The whole thing with the ethanol, why, right? Why ethanol? The fact of the matter is, it's the best thing going. Can't find anything better. Back in the day when Senator Daschle was fighting so hard for us with RFS and RFS 2, it was pretty easy to do things across the aisle in this town. As we've heard from different speakers before, that's not the case today. Thank God they did what they did, and the fact of the matter is, we don't need to really do any more, not in this town. We can challenge what EPA is doing, how they're holding us back on the 202L with lawyers like we've already hired. And we're going to prove it. We're going to take them to the challenge because the law is there, as you heard Boyden say, and Senator Wirth. I'm telling you what, they've done the hard work for us. We just got to see it through. And that's why I'm here. You know, I can go through all these slides all I want and tell you about the different levels of the plants in the different states and the billions of bushels that we go through. And what did I do? There we go. There it is. But here, here's some of the wide range of policy goals that we've got. Same thing as anybody, right? Healthcare, the economy, the wealth and income inequality, climate change, taxes, jobs, foreign affairs, crime. I mean, go down the list. Military. I was sitting on the plane one time. This is way back when Senator Daschle was still in the office. And this is during the Iraq war. And had a young man that was in the military coming back from Minneapolis to Walter Reed. He was an amputee. And he asked where I was going. Of course, I didn't have to ask where he was going. I could tell. And he told me he was going to Walter Reed. And I said, you know what? I said, that's one reason I'm going out here is because I'm promoting the use of ethanol. I don't want anyone to have to fight and defend ourselves from other countries and for that oil that you had to fight for. Too many times we've done that as a country. Many of the wars that we fight are over energy, oil. And he was glad for me to be doing that. He told me, he said, thank you. He said, I really wish I would have been defending the Iowa cornfield where I'm from than defending the oil rigs in Iraq. So we got to keep that in mind. It's something we don't talk about much anymore. And corn is the most efficient, resilient, beneficial crop this nation that farmers can grow. I mean, the carbon sequestration, we've heard all about that already. Jeff did a great job talking about that. And the yields are getting greater and greater. I've got a slide that points that out a little bit more clear later on here. And why should we give the money away? I mean, I think about some of the things that have happened in Watertown. I remember driving through Watertown before the plant was built. And you'd have to wait for a train car to go by, loaded with completely raw corn. It's not the case today. There's several trains that go out of there now. They're not just carrying distillers, but they're carrying the wet distillers, they're carrying the dry distillers, they're carrying the ethanol. And all that money is staying right there in town. Jim and his board are doing a great job, not only with the business, but also promoting it and the use of it in the community. Food versus fuel, we heard a little bit about that earlier today. I get to this point, I guess I'd like to say, you've seen Jeff's slides about how we're producing more with less, and that's exactly true. On our farm, we use what we call MZB. It's a multi-zone based soil sampling. And we break it down, not so much in a grid like a lot of farms do. This is on the soil type. And it's a very unique system that our co-op uses, and we do a lot of testing for the co-op. My son does that. And we don't put any more fertilizer on any of the zones that we know it can produce. So we're taking from the poor ground, we're not putting anything on basically, but on the better ground we're putting more on. We're really not using a lot less, but we're using it more efficiently. And same thing with water, same thing with herbicides. You go down the list, and it makes our farms so much more productive. And I really believe that eventually, someday, we could see that as a regulation. We farmers are getting used to that. I mean, we're being regulated on a number of different fronts, and for good reason. We should be accountable. We don't want to make our water worse. We don't want to make our air worse. And again, that's why ethanol is such a big part of, and why I promote it so heavily. The economic stimulations, I mean, look down the list. Look what we've done there with 16 billion gallons from 43 million metric tons of byproducts. You know, look at the jobs, almost 72,000 jobs, 294,000 indirect jobs, $46 billion contributed to GNP, $25 billion in household income, $10 billion in tax revenue, no subsidies. Can the oil industry say that? Ask yourself. Here's where we came from. I mean, this here slide really points out the facts of where farmers really seen the last big boom. It was during the RFS 1 and RFS 2. And back in those days, we were told, you're on a new plateau. Our commodity groups are telling us, you're on a new plateau. You will never see corn under $4 again. Guess what? It's not up to $4 today. And guess what? I've got a lot of farmer friends that are in trouble today because they believed that lie. They believed that that was going to happen, that they were never going to have to look back, so they overspent. They didn't have the capital to do it. They borrowed to the hilt, and now today we're losing them. We've got 20% higher loss of farms to bankruptcy today than we did just 8 years ago. That's astounding. But we were told a lie. And we were counting on the ethanol industry, and we were counting on what was going to happen through the government, and it didn't happen. I'm here to tell you today that I don't believe that we should count on the government. I think we should be, just like Boyden said, I think we should be out of free market. But if we're going to be on a free market, let us stand on the same ground that they're standing on. Don't hold us back. And where are we headed, and what are the goals? Well, I pretty much said all that already, but the fact of the matter is the same public health reasons and the same get the lead out. I mean, we've got the aromatics that are causing us problems today that we knew were going to cause us problems, and we're worse off today than we really were with the lead, when you really think about it. By defining the pathway to safer and higher octane standards, EPA can reduce the amount of mobile source air toxics from gasoline and the emission to the greatest extent achievable, just as was said earlier. Here's some of the eliminating barriers, and this is all by EPA, basically. You know, I mean, read down that list. I mean, it's astounding. There's no reason that EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency, I mean, they got a lot to be accountable for. We need more to help us hold them accountable. And what's in it for all of us? Well, we can fulfill the RFS targets. You know, we can restore competitive marketplace. We can make possible immediate and substantial reductions to the U.S. transportation section of the carbon footprint. I mean, that was all said earlier. But the SAFE rule, to me, is our ticket to where we're going to make things right. I really believe that. I mean, there's a lot of other government challenges or lawsuits going on right now, the RVP and such, and understand that. But I really believe that the SAFE rule is where we are really going to make some hay. This is what we've, and if we don't, shame on us. That is on us. And more people, more organizations need to jump on board with us and to get to that point. Now, here's something I really want you to think about. Ethanol provides the lowest cost, highest octane enhancer in the world. If ethanol was used to be made the premium, it would cut the cost and spread from regular to premium to pennies. Right now, there's a 60 cents gouge that the oil industry is charging to you for a lesser product. So what I'm saying is, if ethanol was actually sold as a premium, we wouldn't be talking about this today, and we'd be solving the health issues at the same time. This here is just a simple slide that I'll just tell you shows that we are keeping the price of gasoline down. We help the oil industry. We don't harm them, as so many are trying to say that we do. And where are we going and how are we going to get there? Well, this is a simple slide showing how corn production was pretty stagnant, you know, early on in the history of corn production in this country. And then all of a sudden, look there in the 40s, how we started to use hybrids. And I remember my grandpa telling me he was a funk seed dealer, for any of you farmers in here. And I should ask this question first. I usually do. I say, how many farmers are in here? I know there's a couple. Okay, I'll try to speak up. Because most of the time they can't hear because they're always around tractors and augers and things. So I always want to make sure they can hear me or move them to the front. They're kind of like Norwegian Lutherans. They like to sit in the back row, which you've seen here already. But look how that, like my grandpa said, you know, hybrids changed his production. He went from 35 bushels an acre and went to 75 bushels an acre, and he thought he had the world by the tail because now he was filling his grain bins. He didn't even think about any of the fuel additives or anything like that back in those days. But then look how it just continued to climb, and it will continue to climb. And I can tell you why. It's because that's what farmers do. We produce. We're good at it. So let us do what we're good at, okay? Every time that we think that we're on a new plateau, like I said, we show people that we produce. But the fact of the matter is, it really comes down to this, and I don't have a slide for this one, but it comes down to the fact that it's calories. How many hamburgers can every person eat in a day? Just so many, right? Well, guess what? In this world today, we're producing more calories every single day. We can't eat ourselves out of that hole. We're overproducing, and that's on us as farmers. But I was telling Reed and some others, Jimmy earlier, one of the challenges that we have besides what we have in ethanol is the farming system, the marketing system doesn't work for the farmer today. Not the way it was designed to. It works for everybody else. It works for everybody that provides a service to the farmer, and I'm talking from bankers to insurance companies and the Chicago Board of Trade, but it doesn't work for the farmer who has the most invested for the longest amount of time, and he gets the smallest margin from that marketing system. We've got to find a way, and we've got some answers through Farmers Union on how to do this, and to make sure that our farmers have a tool that they can market things through. That's one of the other answers that we can get farmers in rural America back on track. And but ethanol, in my opinion, was the last great thing. It can be the next best thing, and it can also help save the country, and it can also help make our health care better. Thank you.